Hi guys, and welcome to today's how-to video. Today we're going to go over kind of how to paint a Treeman. In the books, the actual codexes, they've got some pretty dramatic paint schemes and what have you for the for these Treemen. But they look, I guess, almost like a comic book entry almost. Not quite what I would expect a Treeman to look like. They include the earth, a lot of earth tones, reds and some greens, but it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. The way they've chosen the colors, even see if that focuses. The detail looks good, but I'm not sure I do it the way that they would. And so, I kind of am hooked on Lord of the Rings. I like the way Treebird look, and I kind of think of Treeman more in terms of almost a cross between the Treebeard, an Ent, and basically a Wraith construct, like a Wraith Lord or whatever, where there is some inner energy from like a elf spirit or soul, and that's coming through the inside, but otherwise it's a tree, So I'm going to show you kind of the way I'm going to interpret a Treeman. So first, let's look at my inspiration for the way I'm doing this Treeman. Alright, here you see a bur oak that's in my backyard. This is probably the best example of trees not being brown. If you look at the bark carefully, the recesses are a darker brownish color, but the surface of the bark is mostly gray. So seeing this really kind of made me start thinking, what color should tree bark really be? Okay, now here I have a picture of a white oak that's in my front yard, and this is actually an example of trees actually having varied colors. There are elements of the brown, more of a grayish brown on the limbs, but there's areas like the picture shown here where large patches are of very light gray. That's the nature of the white oaks around here. So you'll have shades varying along the trunk from a light gray to a more grayish brown. Okay, so this final picture is a tree. I'm not certain which one it is, but again, you can see how it's got the deep brown with a lot of gray, what I'll call dry brushing at this point. It also has moss and lichen grown over it. So these are the pictures that inspired me to kind of take a Treebeard kind of approach to the Treeman. So what's going to follow is how I built the Treeman model, or not built it, but painted it to try to achieve this kind of effect. This video will talk mostly about the painting aspect, and then the second video will talk more about how to get the moss and lichen effect added to, because that's actually not an effect that will look good on every model, but it is one that I'm going to eventually add here. So, alright, let's go and take a look at painting up this Treeman. Alright, so here's my Treeman so far. So the base coat that I gave it is going to be a burnt umber. I actually started to do some of the gray shading and realized, wait a second, I should stop and do a kind of a how-to. So the first step was to base coat the entire thing in in my case, a very dark brown. So I chose burnt umber. It's a really nice, rich, deep dark brown. So this is not put together. It's purposely, I left it apart so it's easier to fix. I bought this already assembled, but I did pop the torso off the waist, and the weapons were magnetized, so those are apart. But so let's take a look at the first step. You'll notice once you've got it base coated, there are actually, in several areas on here, there's actually mushrooms growing from the side of the side here. So little fungus growths. So I figured that really helped me understand that this can be a tree. Do some work to make the scroll work, the carvings, stand out, appear as if it was glowing from some inner energy, like the soul or something. Now this model is going to stand in for two things. It's going to be my avatar for my Eldar Codex, and this will stand in actually in my Kings of War army as a Treeman. So it fits in really, really well in both of those. So I wanted to start with, since there's a lot of Melta rules and flame-related rules in the Avatar, I wanted to put the base, the glowing effect, more of a fiery effect. So I started with taking an orange, kind of like a pumpkin shade of orange. You don't want it too bright. Now I say I use Americana, in this particular case, persimmon. Again, any pumpkinish color. So I'm going to show you kind of what I did first, and we'll go through this very, very quickly, because it's actually easier to do these glowing effects than you think. And you want to do it after the base coat, but before you do the dry brushing. Okay? Whoops, I can see I missed a couple spots with the deep base coating, so I'll do that too. But, alright, so let's take a look. I left some scroll work here on the leg for you to take a look, and we'll go ahead and do that here. So I use, in this case, I'm using a Army Painter, the Psycho, really, really fine tipped brush. You don't have to. If you have a nice fine tipped brush, whether it's bulky or not, as long as the tip is nice and sharp, you'll be able to do it. And I just paint inside those. You have to be a little careful. You want to put as much paint in the line as possible. Try not to get any on top. But if you do, it's just a simple matter of taking a napkin or something and just brushing it, wiping it off, the excess. But do it right away. So don't paint all the orange and then go back and do it. Paint small segments, and if you notice you've got some orange outside the line, so to speak, like it just went there, immediately grab it and wipe it off. And that cleans it up really well. Okay? Hope you can see that. This is the first color. Heat type effects are, goes from a range of reds to yellows. Actually hotter than that, but anyway, most of the time you just stick with the oranges and yellows. So the base coat's going to be a darker orange, and then you're going to highlight it with what would be the hotter parts, being the yellow, so there we go. Now I'll go through here, get that off real quick. Okay, and now that's looking pretty good. I think I got all of it there. There's a little bit more I can probably put right here. Yeah, that's nicer. Okay. Alright. And so there we go. Alright. The orange is in. Okay. I'm going to quickly check the rest of the model, make sure I've got it. Now, in some cases you're going to want it heavier than others. I've decided that down at the bottom of the half of the model, it's a little brighter than in the middle, because I didn't want what's on the thighs to detract from what's on the chest and hands. So, all right, so there's actually one more spot back here. Don't know if it's easy to see or not, right in there. So I'll quickly do that. Hope you can see I'm getting a little bit messy there. Again, we're going to try to get just in the channel and immediately go over it with a napkin or something to brush or wipe as much of that off as possible. Okay. Now, if it dries in place and you can't do it, wipe it off, then you'll have to go back over with the base coat and then touch it up. I had to do that with the eyes. I accidentally got too much on the side of the, or under, I guess, a cheekbone, for lack of a better word, for a Treeman. And I couldn't wipe it off. It was in a bad spot. I couldn't get my finger in there. And I'm going to have to do that here too. So I'll just simply get the burnt umber out very quickly, and we'll touch it up. The paint, if you put it on thin, it doesn't take long to dry. You can go over it pretty quickly with a different color to fix the problem. So I'll do that real quick here. And then I'll just clean it up. Okay. Alright, now we move on from this to a yellow. You want it to be a little bright. The brighter the better. I wouldn't go with the primary yellow. I think it needs to be a little brighter than primary. Yellow just seems to be a little too dark. So there's a few good bright yellows out there for several of the paint lines. I'm unfortunately using acrylic that I don't prefer anymore, Anita's. But so the next step is real simple. What you do is you decide, and these are living, or sorry, animated. These aren't mechanical, so you're not looking for a machinery type glow. You're looking for a magical glow. And so this you don't have to figure out where the light source or heat source is coming from. You want to accent it in the way that looks best to you. So you just simply pick up some of the yellow and just go at it, just this very center, just a few areas. Don't cover all of the orange, just pick out a small part of the channel. Kind of make a middle section, like I'm going right through here. So all this will stay orange, and this is yellow, this will be orange. I'm going to extend the yellow a bit further here to make it just stand out a little bit more. Okay. And then that will be, if it's too thin, it's too watered down. Yellow doesn't cover real well, so you might have to go over it a second time to make sure it pops. There we go. Okay, so that's all you do. It's just two colors. Doesn't take that long, and that's how I went about and did all of these effects here. On the chest, head, face. Put a little bit of yellow on the front of the eyes. I don't prefer the glaring obvious. I really like to make sure the effects are subtle, but not too subtle. They get hidden from view when the in normal lighting, or in once your varnish is on there. I made that mistake once with the Exit at Night. So great. Again, now if you notice the bark that I was talking about in the previous video was much grayer with the brown in the recesses. That's the effect I'm going for on this particular one. So what it is, I mixed up a gray that appealed to me. The gray you use really is open to your interpretation. There's several different colors of trees, grays of trees. So it's all about the dry brush. So it's really important that you do get the paint off your brush, and then you just start working the space. Now as you get toward the area where there's actually the fire effect or glowing effects, that's where the dry brushing has to be careful, because you want to make sure you're getting the gray on without obscuring those details. But the dry brushing will help cover up any of the mistakes where you went over a bit. Okay. All right. Now in many trees, the actual branches are much grayer than the trunk, so I'm actually going to try to go for that effect and dry brush the branches themselves much more heavily. And I hope this comes out. And I definitely need to get better lighting. In order to do these how-tos, I can definitely see the need for better lighting. I don't have the best here. Never done video production before, so this is all kind of new. I'm learning as I go. But I just wanted to share kind of the how to do this. Beginners, and some people are a little bit intimidated by trying to go for these effects, and really it's not hard. You just try. And I'm trying to show you a good way of doing it that's simple. You can just try to get slowly build up the gray on the surfaces, and the more gray you put on, the better I think it's going to look. At least in the, again, for what I'm trying to achieve. But you definitely want to leave that brown in the recesses in this case. There are some trees that the trunk is completely gray. Some even have almost a mild cream color to it. I'm not trying to go with those, so. Okay. So that's how you dry brush. That's how you build it up. And you don't be afraid to try it. Make it. You can always go back and put the base coat back on thinly, and kind of, even if it's, let's say you had a little bit too much paint on the gray and you covered up too much of the brown. Well, you can always go back with a shader and cover up or go over that gray to put some of that darkening back in. Yeah, it's not what you want to do, but you know what? It's okay. It can be very easy to fix some of what you might think of as mistakes. Now I'm going to leave the back more brown than the rest because this really looks, it doesn't look like regular bark on the outside like much of the legs here does, so I'm figuring that it's going to be more brown. Whoa, see what I mean? But not taking the paint off. If that happens, grab a brush and a dry paint brush, and then just start hitting it to start scraping it off. If you need to, dab it with a little bit of water, and then just start painting it off with just water, and that'll dilute it and clean it off. Okay, let that area dry, and we'll get back to it. But again, it is easy to make mistakes. Don't let that throw you. You just want to go through. Do some of it back here. Just a little bit. A little bit of the gray back here is going to offer some highlight. So I'm going to do some of it, but not a lot, because again, this is almost the inside of the bark. And if you've ever taken bark off a tree, it doesn't quite have the same color profile as the surface of the bark and behind it. All right, so. Oops, sorry about that. It's moved out of frame. I apologize. I had a little bit too much on there, but if you keep going at it and keep brushing as if you were still dry brushing, even though maybe you put a little bit too much on, it will even it up. Some of the brush will take some of the paint back off and redistribute it, so it'll look a little better. Alright, so that's the one leg. And actually, that's very, very close to what I'm looking for as an effect. I'm liking that a lot. I think it'll look good when the actual leaves are painted up. Whoops. Okay. The next one. Alright, so let's go a little bit longer here just to show you on this, what I call a tabard, and then hopefully that'll make it just, we'll kind of wrap it up there, and I'll go back and finish the rest of the dry brushing to show you how it looks in the end, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay. See that left a lot of the brown showing in the recesses. Can't say that it looks as good on camera as it does in real life, but definitely looking the way I wanted it to. It reminds me, I look outside and I've got some oaks right outside my house, and this is really starting to look like the coloration I see on those oaks. So I'm very pleased. All right, so I'll go ahead and finish this up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay. Now he's not done, but I've just gone through, finished all the dry brushing of the gray, and actually went on to 2 steps. He's not actually put together. All right. I went ahead and took the liberty of doing the dark green on the leaves, front and back, and then, as I mentioned the other one, these are the fan mushrooms, fan fungus that is coming off his upper body. I made sure to basically put a base coat on those. I used a custom mix of white and like a mudstone color, but Ushabshanti bone would work well there. What I want to do in this particular segment of the video is I want to go through and show you the next step, because the leaves, are an important part of the model, and I think there's a very simple way of taking on these small things. The best thing to do, in my approach, not that it's the only way though, is to base it with a dark green. It's almost your typical traditional base layer kind of approach, and then use a brighter green to do almost an edge highlight. I'm using a Jubilee green by Delta. Again, it's like Snatling green. You don't have to use. I talked to an artist once, and I mean, the paints themselves don't make the artist. It's what you do with them. Now, having said that, I do know there are some paints that are poor quality, and you will not get good results from them. But in general, the Reaper, Vallejo, Citadel, those are real nice. Even some of the Testers military paints are good. So just find some reviews of local paints in your area that you might want to use, and then try them out. If you don't like them, you don't have to use them. Alright, so all I'm going to do with the leaves, though, is I'm going to take a wet brush and just catch the edges. That's all I want to do with them. Now, it'll overlap a bit. I'm not dry brushing these. I'm actually using a wet brush with very little paint on it, just so that I can edge highlight, because I do want them to pop. And I want to make sure that it's a bright enough green that it won't be too subtle. And I'm having a feeling, oops, there's too much paint on that brush, having a feeling that it might very well be too subtle for the camera to pick up. But I'm seeing a nice contrast between the base center of the leaf and the tops. So all you do is you go around each branch and just highlight the edges of the leaves. This will take a little bit of time, but that's all you need to do. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and run through just a couple more to show you some of the technique. Hopefully this will see if you can see that. I'll work on these right here. Okay. So basically you just from these behind the leaf, bring it to the front. That's all you do. Okay, both sides of the leaf, and you can cross the face of the leaf. You'll end up catching the edge really strong, and then the center of the leaf will be a little bit darker, but that looks good. It gives you some texture, so to speak, in the color variation. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to continue painting all these. In this particular staff, I'm going to base coat this whole these tendrils with this light green, and because these are supposed to be fresh living thorny tendrils, so I'm going to just base it with this light green and go over with an even lighter green to highlight it. Okay. All right. So that's why I'll come back when I'm done, and we'll continue on the next piece of the video. Okay. Thanks for sticking with me.
give me a few seconds or a few minutes and I'll get back to this.
Alright, I'm back. I've just finished taking care of the highlighting with the light green and some varnishing, as well as a few touch-ups. And then I did do that real light green on the staff, tendrils. So now next step will be to, I'd say almost layer, it's the wrong word though, the tendrils nearer to the base are going to be a little darker, and I'm going to have the tips going to be lighter, because seeing as this is newer growth, like you would see on a plant, these will be shooting out, and thorns are a woody construct. Now, on some plants, such as raspberries and what have you, they tend to still be green, but they're still very, very hard. A lot of thorny bushes, though, they get darker with age. So I'm going to try to do that whole darker as you get older kind of look on this. So a bright snotling green was what I equivalent is what I kind of base coated it with. I'm going to go with a much lighter green. This is an Irish moss, but actually by adding a little bit of white, maybe a very, very, very creamy yellow to the snotling green, you probably could mix up a similar light color. And then a darker, richer green. In this case, it's dark jungle. Not certain what Citadel Lime might work there, but there actually are a few dark greens I've seen in the line. I just don't know which ones they are. You can wet blend if you know how to do that. I found that the paints I use, generally speaking, are not good at wet blending. They dry too quickly. And I don't have a thinning medium that I've found that I could use to keep them from drying fast. Now, I don't use a lot of Citadel, so I would have to say maybe part of the problem. Some of those more expensive paints I'm sure you could do it with, but I get by just fine. So I'm going to take the darker green and applying it just to the base of the tendrils. What, 1/3 of the way up or so. Probably not more than that. You can if you want, but not too much. You're just trying to get some layers, some different shades being evidenced, and it'll be subtle at first, but as it dries and as it fully comes together, you'll end up with a real nice effect. All right, so there's the first one. I'm going to go with the very light green. And we're going to do the same exact thing, but we're going to do just the top third of each of the tendrils. And here, you want it very opaque, good coverage on the tip, but then as you get further back, you want it to thin out a bit so it fades. Again, wet blending is a better technique, but because I don't have paints that are very good at that, but this still works. And if you're not good at wet blending, you can still use this. So just go with the tips first and get that bright green on there. Okay. And once you've got the tips, a nice solid bright opaque bright green, you can then take the brush and just start kind of just flicking it back and forth, front to back, just to kind of extend that lighter green back. If you need to load the brush, you can do that again, but again, be careful not to put too much on. Alrighty, so. And don't forget, you can't just do two sides. You have to do the, do it in thirds or quarters. So you're going to have to make sure all the edges are covered with that lighter green. And then let's see if we can, if that comes in. Hopefully that shows up. Let me try this. Yeah, when I get better lighting, it'll look a lot better. I'm sorry for that. Now I did want, what's really kind of neat is I've got the same, I did a wash on these leaves with the same Jubilee green that I base coated these with. And because it was a wash, it was thin and really changed the look of these leaves in very nicely. And it made them significantly different than the leaves that are on the arms. There's no highlighting on the edges, no edge highlighting. So what you end up with is just a leaf of a different color. So I try to do that. Now, what I will do now, though, is I'll take this Irish moss is very light green and just touch the tops of the leaves with this to kind of, this is almost a dry, this actually is a dry brush, to get some, it's not really object source lighting, but you do want to highlight the higher parts, the upper surfaces. And so you can dry brush just the upper surfaces. Okay, so that's how these are going to be. Just add a little brightness to it. That's it. So now that's done. Now I noticed in this particular model is what I thought was Scrollwork and such in here. I was going to make it a nice little electric blue kind of glowing thing. It's actually a broken up bark and peel. It's on the undersurface. So in this area, I kind of left it the way with the nice dry brush gray over it. I think that still works pretty well. So no extra details in the staff. Leaving it pretty woody. But this is a special item that he's carrying, so it's not really necessarily a growth, a living growth. So you could do anything you want with that. So now what I've decided to do, though, is the inside here of this, I base coated the middle, this bright Jubilee green, but I'm going to actually lighten it up a bit. And use some softer wooder tones, tans and such, to make this look like the inside of the wood, and then fading, if you will, to that green. So that's basically the next step. And I'm going to essentially just use one color to do that, but I'm going to be blending it a bit. You can't call it, it's not wet blending or anything like that, but it's very simply, you start at the very edge and you work your way back softly. So let's see if this works, if you can see that. And we can go on the edge is going to be the tan. Let's get enough on there though. Right on the edge, and then once you've got that thin edge defined, you're going to pull it back toward the center. You'll need to put obviously more paint on the brush to do that, but start here and then just pull it back toward the center. And then as you get rid of paint and it starts getting thin and hard to put more stuff on it, you start brushing back and forth. And then it's not dry brushing, but using the brush to just kind of scrub it in there, blend it in. Not hard, just let the bristles flow. And then do both sides. You do not want an even coat on this, because that definitely just looks artificial. Well, it is artificial. I mean, it's all artificial, but it's like this. Okay, that little stripe there, that does not look good. You need it to be kind of roughed up, blended, faded front to back. So you kind of work your way through. You just kind of rough it up with the brush, and kind of push the paint around a bit. It will thin it out, and then as you get toward the center, it's more green, and then there's near the outside. Okay, and that's how I'm making it look like the inside of a woody part of the plant. Yeah. Kind of do the same thing, but this is almost a dry brush. It's more. There's more paint on here than you would use with the dry brush, because it's such a small amount of surface area. It's not really easy to dry brush in there, so just a matter of scrubbing it in. And if you have a stiff brush, that would be a good way to go about doing this. Okay. Alright, there we go. So now I've got the greens. I'm thinking that may still be a little too dark in the middle. I don't know. I'll let it sit for a bit now. I think actually it's not that bad. It conveys the concept pretty well, and it should actually be kind of darker in the middle. Yeah, I think that does work. Okay. Yeah, so that's how you do the staff. And essentially, that's where you can stop. You don't have to go further. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to call this one done, but this is like part 2, okay? The piece that the next video in this is actually going to be more an effects video on but you can actually use on tree models, as well as something like this Treeman. And that's going to be to basically put moss on various surfaces. Remember the pictures I showed you earlier? There were moss, especially near the bottom of the trunk, but in several cases going quite a ways up. And I do want to put that on here. So if you're interested in doing that, go on to the next video and watch how I go about doing that. But if you like it the way it is now, you can just pretty much glue it together and give it its final varnish, and you're set to go. Okay? Alright, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, let me know. If you have any requests of things you might want me to kind of cover, by all means, let me know. I don't have all the answers. I just have a way of doing things, and it may not be the best, but again, it's variable, so let me know. Share, like, and subscribe, and thank you for sticking with me. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.